All right, so with our SolidWorks program, pretty much going to have three modules. We're going to deal largely with parts, but very rarely are you building one part and it's going to stand alone and nothing else is attached to it or joined to it or in relation to something else. So we have the assembly module that when we create multiple parts, we can put them together, see how they interact with each other, and are capable of getting engineering data and more information back out of that system. And then the drawing module is where we're going to make the documentation and the working drawings and those combinations. So inside of, then let's go with the new. And I have a bunch of templates, so if you see the novice, you probably don't want to be on the novice screen. All right, so we'll come over to advanced, and let's come down to part. I think I still have the part here. All right, so this is the default part. I always, when I create templates, when I add all of this other stuff, I always try to leave the part template in kind of its pristine state, because that was what was loaded as the default with the software. So it's not everything that I want. All right, so things that I would want showing, things that I would want to interact with, but it does give me the basis to start with. All right, so for the SolidWorks class, there are a couple of videos that I will bring over that will tell you how to generate the templates, and just kind of depends on your level of interest, because our focus is the GD&T. So the basic layout, and the upper left is the pull-down menus, and most everything that is a command you will be able to pull down and find and identify. It's buried in there somewhere. Right? And then the standard toolbar for the home, and I have turned this one off. That's why, well, it probably didn't come up when I first launched, but if you get this when it first launches, there will be a box in the lower left that you can uncheck that says show at startup, and then that will turn this off. If you like working in this interface, then stay with it, and you can utilize the recent documents, folders, resources, the advanced. And so whenever I've used this, I've always gone straight to the advanced, which is kind of why I end up turning it off in the first place. So under the recents, you'll see everything that was open, the last 10 or so files, learning and tutorials from SolidWorks. So there is a lot of information out on YouTube, out on the web. Lynda.com is a resource which is tied to LinkedIn and is a for-pay service or a subscription service. Solid Professor is a subscription service. Everybody kind of has their methodology and recommendations. There's things that I've presented in industry that if it doesn't work for you, don't do it. If you see a better way, if you have a better way, you do not have to follow what I'm putting on the video, right? If you get stuck, you can go back and review the videos. I try to put in the tricks and traps and the types of things that you need to watch out for. The things that become problematic as we go through and generate the sketches. But everybody presents their material, has different priorities on the material, and I like to think that I am designed for manufacture. That when I look at this, how am I going to make it? Not everything is going to be 3D printed, and probably within my career, not everything is going to be 3D printed. We're going to 3D print a lot of stuff, and it's going to be a very accessible technology, but it's not going to replace standard subtractive manufacturing too soon anyway. I won't say it won't ever, but in the next 15 to 20 years it will make inroads, but I really don't think that it will have the same efficiency or the same broad scope that standard traditional manufacturing. All right, so if the home isn't up, then we're just looking at this. The next one over is new, which is what we did to get to this screen. and then opening up an existing document, then saving our documents, printing. Kind of our focus will be to have paperless. I would still like to be in that paperless manufacturing. I print as little as possible, basically. That I'll put it that way. The all-important one that's grayed out because we don't have anything on the screen and nothing active is the undo button. Undo and Control-Z are synonymous all the way across Windows. So undo is one of my favorite first hotkeys that you should know in any of the Windows applications. Is I don't know what I just did, but I don't like it. Undo. Control-Z. All right, and then the selection. Anytime you see an arrow, and I kind of jumped over those, but anytime you see an arrow next to, these are going to be selections and different types of selections. So if you're used to more of an Adobe environment, I think Adobe uses the lasso selection, which is kind of a curvature thing. I'm not real comfortable with that, and I do have my habits. I have 20 years worth of habits that are not going to break anytime soon. I try to each release, each version of the software, I try to build in just a little bit more of the things that I don't use, try to use them, so I can see where they fit into the workflow. All I can really say is try it, and if it works for you, stay with it. The rebuild and Control-B. Also notice that, well, if I'll let go. The tooltip is showing me that is the rebuild, and next to it has the Control-B. If there's a hotkey assigned, it will be as you hover over that tool and see the tooltip. Next one will be the file properties. We can assign metadata, data to the data fields to this part and track part numbers and finishes and materials and all of that type of information in the file properties. File properties, when we come over here to the custom properties, these two have the same symbol. This one is more of a graphics interface, where this one will take you directly to start entering data. All right, so I don't use this one that much. I try to remember it's up there, but for the most part, I don't use it that much. And then with the options, this is where the trouble begins. Is just like an AutoCAD, just like an NX, just like any of Inventor, any of the other modelers, there is way, way, way more information than you want to know about. All right, so at this level, we hit the options command. You're going to see two screens: system options and document options. The system options are just for the system. If I don't have a part file open, drawing file, assembly, I'm only gonna see the system. As soon as I open a part assembly or a drawing, then I also get its document properties. And that is specifically for this session, this document, this file. If I want to save it as global, there are some things that are going to stay modal from session to session, but typically you're going to make these changes and then write them to a template. And the template is going to be what preserves them. So next time you open, you don't have to go in and make the same changes. So there is a bunch of stuff, and it's going to look slightly different because I mentioned earlier that we started getting 2019 files. My little laptop here is running out of hard drive space, so I took off my residual. I left one older version of SolidWorks, and in the commercial I will load Piggyback. So when I looked in the install, I had installs back to 2014. So I had 6 versions or 5 versions of SolidWorks on this computer. All right, that's an advantage, because if somebody sends me a 2013 file or 2014 file and says, hey, I need you to leave this as a 2014, I can open it up and I can work with it and try not to save it in a newer version they can't use. But what typically happens is that somebody gets 2019, they start using it, and then we haven't decided to upgrade yet. And a lot of organizations, and something that you'll have to get used to, whether it's the programming, the design, the engineering, whatever portion whatever sandbox you're playing in, is that there will be a path to upgrade. It has to be installed, qualified, proven, no major crashes, stupid things going on in the background. And then probably most companies will wait till about Service Pack 2 before they really embrace and start to work with the new software. All right, so I went to 2019 because we started getting files, and this is the computer that gets to be the test case. And if there's not any issues with this as we go further into the commercial, then we'll start upgrading our 2018s to 2019. One thing of note with the education versions then is it was said that when you install 2018, depending on what level you install at, there are versions that are good for 90 days, versions that are good for a year, and with the student design kit or engineering kit, it will be good for 2 years. All right, so it just kind of depends on where you're at. Also, if you're a starting business and have under a certain revenue stream, then you can request an innovation, I believe it is, and that would be a 2-year license because any company wants to get you on the hook using their software, get familiar with it, get comfortable with it, and as you build up the company, then we're going to give you this innovation license so that, and that may not be the right term, but so that you will, basically come into the fold when you, become a full business. All right, so all that being said, this is going to look a little different than your screen. So one of the things we're going to study that did not make it into the list, MBD is model-based definition, and it is driven by DIM Expert. DIM Expert and tolerance analysis did make it into our course description. And it's a methodology of analyzing those tolerances and building up the stack ups and looking at those. So setting specific, let's see, allow editing. And then the other one must be under document properties. So the two that we'll really be looking for is under the drafting standard and then going into DIM Expert. Do we want to use under the drafting standard? My install, I installed as ISO, and I like some of the variations on ISO. Not everybody likes ISO, so you can switch over to ANSI, save that in your template, and you will have the ANSI. The main thing is your vertical dimensions will appear vertical in ISO. I kind of like that. If you're in ANSI, they will remain horizontal, and they kind of take up more space. But it's a minor, there's certainly more differences, but those are the minor differences. And so what happened is in 2011 or 2012, I wasn't paying attention when I hit okay, go ahead and install it as, or, pick my units as ANSI and, and metric as my defaults. And then I started using it and went, well, this looks different. Well, I kind of like this. And then all of a sudden I was using the standard. Pick the standard that is most convenient and makes the sense to you, or that your organization tells you to. All right, so once you pick the drafting standard, then under DIM Expert, this is where we're going to start seeing the defaults for our tolerances. And size dimensions, plus or minus 5. Location dimensions, chain dimensions, geometric tolerances, all of our feature control frames, the tolerances that are being applied to them. We can go in and set these as defaults rather than having to change them every single time we go to apply. All right, so controls and options. All right, and then the other thing would be under the units is we're right now in inches and millimeters, and there are different combinations that we can go to. So depending on what you're working with, you have from the very small to the very big. I still want to put in the enhancement request that they should give me light years or parsecs so I can design the universe, and at least our little portion of the galaxy, so I don't have to scale it up and down all the time. And so far that one hasn't gone very far. So knowing where a couple of these are at is handy. So I'll hit the OK, and again, my screen is just a little bit smaller, so I'm right on the edge of being able to use that. The little arrow next to, we have the customize, which is the same as coming out. Well, let's go ahead and click it, which takes you into this box, which will, if your icons are too big, too small, or somewhere in between you can make modifications. I'm going to cancel that real quick because I want to point out that if you're in the gray area on any of these command manager, you'll also be able to find the customize and the toolbars that are being shown. All right, so start the avalanche of information here. Is under the customize, then the one that I would recommend, and I don't think it's on by default yet, is that you lock command manager and toolbars to their position. You will not accidentally drag them away, move them unexpectedly, have them pop up on your second screen if you have an extended screen. So let me turn that off real quick and I'll hit OK. And so if I drag, oh, it's on the tab. They used to be where if you were anywhere on the tool, on the command manager. But if you get something like that, because you clicked on the tag and dragged a little bit too far or twitched when you went to pick it, and it comes off of its location, that is a very good time to go into that customize and lock to that position. All right, so right click, customize, make sure that you're locking the command manager and toolbars. As far as showing the tooltips, if you're familiar with all of those icons, don't want to see little pop-ups, you can turn those off. There is way more information and settings. The other thing that you'll see is the mouse gestures. I'm trying in some of the latest videos to utilize those. I just can't do it. Some people love them. I just can't get into the rhythm of using the mouse gesture. So we'll take a look at that real quick, and then as the customization, return to defaults and reset defaults if it comes to that. So my S menu popped up. So what I was mentioning about the mouse gestures, if I hold down the right mouse button and drag to the right, the donut will pop up, and then you can pick any one of those, and when you let go, in that case it'll take you to that view, and I really didn't want to go to the right view, but I'm in the right view. Alright, so we come across, you have the part, and if this was a larger screen, I would see the part 1 with a little asterisk next to it, and that asterisk would be the notation that it has not been saved or been saved lately, that there's been changes made since the last save. So if there's an asterisk up there and I haven't saved for 20 minutes and it hasn't warned me because I turned that off, or it's, I just wasn't paying attention to it, glancing up at the title of the part will help me out, and I can always hit Control S on the keyboard to save. Search commands. So any command that you can think of, I would recommend keeping it in the second. I'm doing a little arrow next to the search commands. I would recommend keeping it in the commands, because if you don't know what, I want to look for a jog line, and you start typing JO, it will come up to the list, and maybe, oh, I picked the forums and the discussions apparently. Let's try that again. So since I'm not in a sketch, these are grayed out, but there's the jog line. Jog is sheet metal, jog line is for the either for the sketch, or is also terminology for placing an exploded view in an assembly, or denoting an exploded view in an assembly. All right, so you can type in the first couple letters if you know what you're looking for, and it'll take you to it. And it will also, I think it gives you the route to find it if you go through all of the pull downs. All right, so I meant to mention in the part, so I'll just throw it out there before I forget again, is that under the part file, you have the ability to create surfaces, faces, curves. Oh, no, wrong one, sorry. What I was looking for, oh, I went one too high, was we can do surfaces, and then I was supposed to jump down to sheet metal and weldments. So if your interest is in creating profiles and base weldments and structures, we have that capability to apply. And I mentioned that when I finish up the media for Chapter 3 for this semester for the 254 class, I'm going to do a module on sheet metal and a module on weldments because of the fit. So those are included in the part. They're not separate modules. You can build those straight away. The settings, then, we're going to see a couple more places where those are available. Coming across the command manager, the features, the sketch, direct editing. Usually I would say turn the direct editing off, but we're actually going to use that. So I would say leave the direct editing on for this class unless it's in your way. And then to turn any of these off, we'll right click on that tab and uncheck the checkbox, and it will open up more room if your screen is kind of condensed. So I do want that on. I probably don't need the add-ons. I typically go up to, we did customize, the other one was add-ons, and then the button size. Oh, they added button size. So that may not be in 2018, so I'll get myself in trouble for that one. All right, so direct editing says that we can move and change orientation and do some basic things on the fly to the model. And then evaluate was all of those fun interference detections, measures, and where did it go? Mask properties. Since there's nothing on the screen, we don't really get mask properties. Anything that's grayed out, if there's nothing for it to act upon, we don't get it. All right? Once there's something on the work area that we can utilize it with, then we'll get that command. Zebra stripes and curvature are visualization tools that will tell us how the flatness or the curvature that we've generated in a part. More draft, symmetry, I mean, there's just a bunch of available tools. And then the expressed versions of simulation, flow, and what was the other one? Yeah, probably simulation and flow are the two important ones there. So then coming across the heads-up display, the quick toolbar right at the top. If yours doesn't look like that, is because I like to add things into the lecture, and so you probably start here and finish over here. And so I add things and I take them away as part of the lectures. And if there's a tool that you find that you're using, we can go into the customize, grab it, add it to this list, and then it becomes part of your work area for that group. Coming on around is the task pane, and if you happen to turn off the task pane, I want to say that that is in view, and nope. Shows you how many times I go to this one. Yeah, maybe it is under toolbars, in which case it would also be under the customize. There it is, task pane. So it used to be in a separate group. That means I should be able to come up here into the gray, and if I uncheck the task pane, it's not over there. So just be careful kind of clicking, and there are some F keys that when you go across the top of the keyboard, that will affect what we're doing. So for example, I think it's F11. Nope, that was my brightness. There we go. So F11 hides the feature tree property manager over on the right, or I'm sorry, over on the left. F10 gets rid of the command manager, makes it a little bit more of the screen. F8, that one condenses a little bit more. F9 is the display will extend and contract. Right, so there's a lot of those keyboard shortcuts that if you hit something accidentally and it may change and you won't recognize it until the next time you go to use it, and then where's it at? So task pane, the welcome properties, if we have the forums turned on, you'll see some forum comments. I don't typically use those. The design library, let's see if this has, so commonly used items, and then also coming down to the content. This is where I'm not being patient enough getting button happy. There we go. I can come down to the weldments, and then these are all of the standard profiles for each of the weldments. So if you're going to do or interested in the weldments, we'll detail this again, but this is a zip file that we download and extract, and we put it in a very specific location. It doesn't work if it's in a different location, but this probably has close, I'd have to query the folder, but probably close to 1,000 profiles. And if you can think it probably is already in there. So things like the toolbox, and when we're in the assembly, will give us socketed cap screws, hex heads, nuts, washers, pins, just a wealth of hardware and fasteners to work from. And then coming across the bottom, going around the screen, is the status bar. Let's see if that probably didn't work. Let's bring up. I wanted to zoom that. All right. So I don't know if it thinks I have must think I have an extended window because of the projector. I was going to try and move this up just a little bit so you can see a little better, but coming across the bottom is, on a regular occasion, I forget to launch my metric template and find out that I'm in inches. I can very quickly change from inch to metric, or I open up the metric template, need to be in inches, I can swap those. And then this edit document units will take me directly into the options and back to the units page. So we can kind of shortcut to those items. The status bar at editing part, I'm at the very top level. It's waiting for me to tell it what to do. Give me some information and that I can build. And then coming across, if we were on the screen sketching, we would have X, Y, Z coordinates. We would have radiuses, diameters. I could get a lot of information just glancing down to the status bar. And then, of course, the current version. And we'll stay in model. We're not really doing anything in the way of motion studies. And then we get to the feature tree coming all the way around. And at the very top is the part. We're not really concerned about the default and the display state at this point, but we will probably get into some configurations. At least I will make you aware of the configurations early on, because we're going to look at different conditions. And if I supply you a part that I've built in those different conditions and we want to see what it does to the tolerances, it will probably have configurations to manage them. So configurations is a way that I always put it in terms of, you have a 1/4-20 socketed cap screw that goes from 1/4 inch to 6 inch long by 1/8 inch increments. Do you really want to draw 240, 300 separate files and manage them all? Or would you rather have one part with 300 configurations that you can pick fairly seamlessly? We'll go with the configurations. All right, so when we come over to the design library in that toolbox and I pick a socketed cap screw, it's going to not only have the 1/4-20s, it's going to have odd 80s all the way up to probably 2 inch 4s, 6s. I don't know what the thread form is that big, but very big threads. And then if we can't find it, we can add it. All right, so if it's something that we use, we can build it into that database. All right, so the configurations will come over to the tab, but this is giving us that quick, we're just in the default configuration and the default display state. So what we're looking at is our defaults. I don't typically use sensors. I haven't turned that off yet. We may go back and turn that one off. And since I have my solid bodies on, that one isn't turned on by default. Let's do that real quick. I'll jump into the options. And then, let's see, I think it's going to be document, properties. Nope. Well, if you make it to detailing, turn the shaded cosmetic threads off, because it eats up video and does some weird things. And I think I went to the wrong side. All right, let me find it. And oh, there we go. So sorry, it was on system options and then feature manager. And so I really don't use the sensors, but sensors would be one of those things. I need to control the mass. I've set my part at aluminum, and as I start off with a big block and I'm removing material or I'm adding and taking features away, the sensor will keep track of the mass of the part, and if it gets over 500 grams, it will flash a warning. Problem is that when it gets over 500 grams, every time you do something, it flashes a warning. So or the other parameters that we can build into a sensor. So I'm going to switch that over to automatic if we create one. And then the one that I would recommend that you turn on, I just saw it, was the solid bodies. We'll turn that to show. All right, so what that does is I want to keep track of solid bodies. If I happen to create disjointed bodies, then it will show me those previous, or show me both of those listed in the solid bodies. The other one that we could turn off, or I think that I turned off, is the history, and I just have that as hide. So if you want to try those, you can turn them on for a little while. Again, whatever fits into your workflow, whatever you decide you like, leave it on your screen. It's not a big deal. All right, so going down, I got rid of my sensors. I have the solid bodies, material database. If I edit the material, then we have a fairly extensive list of steels, aluminums, and if we don't have it, we can add it into the custom materials. Front plane, top plane, right plane, and the origin. Those are our standard planes, and right now I'm in the right plane, so I'm going to do the shortcut for Control-7 to send it to isometric. The reference triad for the X, Y, and Z rotates over, and it tells me that it's at isometric. So that's one of my visual clues. And now when I hover over any of these, if you want to see them, and this will be the start of the right mouse button, because I am right mouse button intensive. Right click, and you can use the little eyeball to show. If you want to see them all the time, we can show them. A lot of times they're in the way, so we only really need to highlight it when we're making a selection. But if you like to see them up there, turn them on for a little while, see how it works. All right, so as I go across, that's showing me each of those, and at the intersection of each of those planes is the origin. And the origin is an arbitrary point at the center of our modeling universe. That's it. Everything comes to a point right there, our origin. So the first rule is pretty much anything we put in a sketch is going to be related in some form or fashion to that origin. All right, coming across, we're going to wait to open up the sketch. Coming across is the property manager, which will activate and deactivate kind of automatically. So as you're sketching a line and you need access to those properties, it pops up and shows you the line properties, or it pops up and it shows you the circle properties. So we really don't interact with that one very much. We're interacting with it all of the time. All right, we're not activating it, it's activating for us. The configuration manager, then, those configurations and then the display states, those are going to be listed under the tab. And then that dim expert thing, this is going to be the list of dim experts dimensions or features that we've applied. And then the last one is how to make it the list of any appearances, colors, or anything else that we've applied. And I kind of jumped over the File Explorer, the View Palette, not really that critical here, but the appearances, scenes. So for my default, if you want to change, this is probably one of the most common questions I get. I don't like the gradient background, I want to pick something different. We can go into the scenes and the basic scenes, and if you find something in here that you like better, you can right click and set as the default, and then it will be listed as the default up here, and or you can switch through to try different ones before you decide. Yep, I managed to pick that twice. All right, so I like the plain white background. I think there's some things that are kind of disco in here, and that having the screen backgrounds can get a little annoying, especially staring at it for a lot of hours every day. All right, so appearances are going to have the things like the colors that we can apply at different levels, and then the scenes, and then the last is decals. If we wanted to put a label on something, we can make that decal. And while I'm here, I'll do the custom properties, that if we create a custom property list, I can very quickly populate this and have more interaction than just going into the file properties that were up here. All right, so last one on the tabs, the dim expert ties into the model-based definitions. And I want to see what the difference is. The full MBD package is an add-on, and we'll take a look at it when we get, by the time we get into to that level, we will have access to creating the PDFs, the outside documents, the interaction. There's more to it than what would amount to the dim expert items. All right, So that's our overview. I'll go ahead and stop the video here.